Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into something a bit different. It's a source collection that gives us, well, not data points or timelines, but these really profound philosophical, sort of metaphorical excerpts.
That's right.
And they explore the big human questions, right?
Yeah.
Mortality, what happens next, the afterlife, and, how legacy works eternally. It feels less like a history lesson and more like a roadmap for thinking about it all. So our mission today, and it feels pretty important, is to take these very abstract terms you find in the sources, things like the Master of the Passage, the Veil of Mortality, and really try to extract what they do. What functions do they describe? We want to get at the core human stuff they map out. Transition, why ritual is necessary, how things endure. If we pull this off, you should walk away with a hopefully pretty solid structural understanding of how these ideas connect.
I think that's spot on. What's really compelling about this material, for me, is how rigorous it feels.
Yeah.
It doesn't just leave the mystery hanging there as some sort of chaotic mess. Instead, it actually offers a framework. You could almost see it as 4 parts. Grappling with the unknowable, but doing it systematically. It moves you from that moment of crossing over to what the living need to do, and then finally to this promise of continuity, of something lasting. It sort of defines the rules for thinking about endings.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start where their sources do, right at that boundary, the philosophical threshold you have to cross, and the guides that are apparently designated to make sure that passage is orderly. The sources kick off by defining the obstacle, the big unknown, the Veil of Mortality. And it's defined quite specifically as representing the world's mysteries. That's not just poetic language, is it?
No, not at all.
It feels like it sets up right away that death is this fundamental boundary, an intellectual frontier the living just can't fully grasp, the ultimate limit of our knowledge, perhaps?
Precisely. And because that boundary is all about mystery, what the sources do next is immediately introduce figures. Figures to give shape, structure to the idea. So first we get the Emblem of Death. The source text is really minimal here, but it's powerful. Its function he represents. That's it. This figure isn't doing anything. The purpose is purely symbolic. He's like the immovable, passive fact of finality.
But I find that a little confusing, actually, having this emblem figure right alongside the next one. If death is already represented by this passive symbol, why also include an active figure who actually handles the process? Doesn't that feel a bit redundant conceptually?
It might seem that way at first glance, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it sets up a really crucial hierarchy that kind of structures everything that follows in these texts. The emblem is the undeniable reality. It's the what of death.
Okay.
The sources basically say you can't ignore this unavoidable presence, but the system, the whole framework, it can't just function on an immovable fact alone. It needs action. And that's why we then move to the Master of the Passage.
Oh, all right.
And his role is defined very clearly. He guides those to the afterlife.
So he's the action part.
He's the mechanism.
Yeah.
He takes that terrifying, abstract reality symbolized by the emblem and turns it into something navigable, a process. He provides the function. He makes sure the journey isn't just some chaotic plunge into nothingness, but a structured transition to the next defined stage.
Okay, I see.
So the sources define the unavoidable nature, first the emblem, and then immediately give you the structure for coping for passage to the master.
That makes sense. That move from unavoidable fact to manageable function.
Yeah.
That's the intellectual bridge we need, right? So now that the sources have laid out this path for the departed, the structure seems to demand a kind of immediate reciprocal focus.
Exactly.
If the person leaving has a defined guide and a path, then what's the required action for those left behind? And this pivot brings us straight into the mandatory emotional and practical response of the living. This shift seems to start with the spirit of the ritual. The sources define this simply as the practices they take part in. This feels like where the abstract philosophy really hits the ground. It acknowledges that when you're faced with the chaos of loss, the human instinct is to create structure, to do something.
Absolutely.
So the spirit of the ritual is that fundamental urge to perform concrete actions, ceremonies, gatherings, maybe personal traditions, anything to give meaning to that transition.
And those practices, those actions, they're rooted in what the sources call the Heart of Mourning. There's this undeniable emotional mandate behind them. The text is really unambiguous here. It states, they must honor.
Must honor, not should.
Exactly. It's not optional. It's presented as a required piece of emotional work for the survivors. This need to honor validates the life that was lived, and it forces the living to really confront the disruption, the loss. It's like a mandatory acknowledgement.
I appreciate that the sources enforce that essential grief, but what's also interesting is they don't let the living just get stuck there, do they?
No, they don't.
They seem to mandate a balance, a kind of duality that's needed to move forward. Because right after the instruction to mourn, they introduce the celebration of life, and they emphasize the statement that they continue to live.
This duality, look, this is maybe the most important instruction for the living within this whole framework.
Yeah.
It represents a kind of philosophical resilience, I think.
Resilience, yeah.
The sources validate the necessary grieving, the mourning, but at the same time, they insist that this process has to ultimately enable the resumption of life. It's the philosophical justification for, the wake or the toast or that moment when the community comes together and says, okay, we've honored the past, now we have to fuel the future.
Right.
The mourning has its place, its necessary place, but the continuation of life, that's presented as non-negotiable.
So the sources have mapped the transition for the departed and the required response from the survivors. Once that crucial pivot towards continuation is made by the living, we then turn to the final phase in this structure, right? Which is about what actually endures, what's eternal, the legacy that sort of anchors the whole system.
Yes, and what's fascinating here, I find, is how consistently hope is provided. It just underpins this entire framework. Despite how severe the emblem sounds or how absolute the veil seems, we get the promise of the afterlife. It just states quite simply that hope is offered.
Hope is offered.
Yeah, and this hope functions almost like metaphysical currency. It's the sustaining belief that allows the master to guide the departed and allows the living to do their emotional work, to mourn, and then, crucially, to move forward.
Okay, so you have the structure, the journey guided by the master, anchored by this offered hope. What does that ultimately achieve for the departed? The sources talk about the rituals of transformation, and the result is stated as they are reborn, which suggests the passage isn't just an end, an extinction, but a fundamental change of state. Like a spiritual renewal, maybe? A sort of cosmic recycling that ensures existence continues, just in a new form.
And building right on that personal transformation, that rebirth idea, the sources then zoom out. They look at the societal level, focusing on the legacy of belief. This isn't just about the individual spirit enduring, but about the collective structure of meaning itself enduring. The text states it pretty definitively. The beliefs endure.
The beliefs endure.
Yeah. It confirms that the framework itself, the rituals, the hope, the guiding figures we've been talking about, it's self-sustaining. It gets passed down through the community of the living.
That concept leads directly to the final, really powerful anchoring statement of the whole system, doesn't it? Defining an eternal legacy. He is there, he will be. Now, we need to be careful here. Who is he in this context? Is the source saying the master of the passage is perpetually present? Or is it about the endurance of the system itself?
I think it's definitively confirming the latter, the system itself.
Oh.
Because the legacy is explicitly tied to the beliefs enduring. That he, capital H, seems to solidify the certainty that the framework of meaning, the guides, the hope, the structure we just outlined will always exist. It's the philosophical anchor stopping the whole thing from just being poetry.
Right.
It guarantees the perpetual presence of the structure that makes mortality understandable, or at least approachable, within this system. So, if we connect this to the bigger picture, what these sources are really providing is a kind of blueprint for resilience. A profound one, actually. They're teaching that mortality isn't just an ending point. It's about defining roles, especially for the living, providing structural certainty through these guiding figures, and guaranteeing that belief itself endures. It's a whole framework for making meaning out of the ultimate unknown.
So what does this all mean for you, listening? We started by looking at that ultimate unknowable, the Veil of Mortality. That led us to the required emotional duty for the living, the Heart of Mourning. And we finally landed on the certainty of an eternal legacy. It's quite a rigorous path, but also a hopeful one, mapped out in just a few really potent phrases. Which leaves us with a final thought, something these sources sort of implicitly ask you to consider. If the legacy of belief truly ensures that the beliefs endure forever, then the question is, what active practices, what part of the spirit of the ritual are you taking part in right now, today, that genuinely guarantees that your beliefs, the things you hold important, will survive you? What actions ensure endurance? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this pretty profound deep dive. We look forward to exploring the next stack of sources with you soon.